Hi, I'm Chris McCoy.
Hey, I'm Toby Sells.
Welcome to Memphis Flyer Podcast this week. Well, at least it's warmer
Oh
outside.
my God. Well, I'm afraid we're in fall spring. You know, it happens every year, Chris. And honestly, since this is a podcast, I can say it just pisses me right off.
You want like four well-defined seasons, right? Like now we're in winter, now we're in spring.
And that's what we were promised in grade school.
I know,
But like you get older and you realize that
they lied to us in grade
they
school.
really did. Those folks that love to see winter, they hate that false, the summer that comes around. For me, I hate the winter time. And so it's like 70 today. We'll probably have a snow before Memphis in May. And that, again, pisses me off to my core.
Well, in happier news, we've got the new Memphis Flyer here. Check it out. The physical copy. We love those physical copies,
We
don't
sure
we?
do. Yeah. And you do too. And we see that at newsstands every single week. Thank you very much.
Yeah. We can brag because we have an enormous pickup. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
And that just kind of goes to the Flyer brand out there. And frankly, it's for everybody who used to, like I did before I worked at the Flyer. I would pick this up, go to a bar, and I would read the thing cover to cover. It is and that's how I got started with the Memphis Flyer all those years ago.
And we always say that that's like our target, like the middle of our target audience is people grabbing it for lunch, Huey's, or like out at a bar or whatever,
Yeah.
or pick it up and we're like, I want to find something to do tonight, or this weekend. That's what we do. But we also sneak in the hard news with all that, which is one of the things that we're doing, that we did this week. Toby's got the cover, and it is the battle for Midtown. And, the always exciting subject of zoning.
Zoning and city planning, those things that really get the kids up in arms these days.
But, people are up in arms, but I have to tell you, and I've already bragged on you once this morning, but I think this is a fantastic story.
Oh, thank you.
You covered all the bases, and really, to me, because I've been hearing a little bit about this, all along, and didn't really have a grasp of the issues. But after I read your story this morning, I feel like I do have a grasp on the issues.
And I'm already hearing from folks along those exact same lines. They're seeing the yard signs out there. What does this mean? They're going to sell out. This plan's going to sell out the neighborhood. Memphis 3.0 as a plan has been around since 2019. It's not, if you're a Memphian and you kind of care about news at all in town, you've heard of 3.0. You might not know exactly what it is, but there's a group out there that thinks it's going to do some bad stuff down the road. And I think we're kind of the first news outlet to really kind of dig in, see what those folks are talking about, and find out what City Hall thinks about it.
So is it MidtownMemphisorg.org?
MidtownMemphis.org. It's a volunteer group, and they've been around and active for a long time. They do a lot of things. They take care of the community gardens at Huey's and over in Washington Bottoms. They've got they plant trees around Midtown. It's called Shade is Cool, that program. But they also, they get involved with different land use and zoning things, and so one of the volunteers here, Robert Gordon, got involved with the group back when the Poplar Art Lofts were going to be built right over there across the street from Overton Park and
Right.
the Brooks. And the plan that they had there, they were really afraid it was going to, negatively affect things happening in the park over there. So he got involved there, has been involved with it, the rest of the way. And so, and he's kind of he's spearheading their side of things for Memphis, MidtownMemphis.org against 3.0.
And Robert Gordon is an author and a filmmaker, and he's written extensively about Memphis music. It came from Memphis, and Midtown, Memphis Rent Party are two absolutely essential books to understand the city. And he directed the first movie about Stax.
Mm-hmm.
And also, full disclosure, he's currently working on a film about the Newport Folk Festival that my wife, Laura Jean Hawking, has been editing for the last 2 years. And that is going to be spectacular. I cannot wait for people to hear it. And just to brag on it a little bit, our friend Kevin Houston, who's doing the part of the sound design, had downloaded it, to take it from our machine to his machine so he could work on it, and he spent like a day getting all the parts and stuff, but he never actually watched the movie. And then he watched the movie like when he was getting ready for the sound, and he called like my wife up and was like, "This is amazing." Like when he actually like paid attention to it.
Yeah.
But we'll hear a lot more about that. I'm sure I'm going to get a cover story about that
Can't wait.
at one point sometime later. But yeah, this is about Robert's activism.
So to take you way on back, 2019, Memphis 3.0. Memphis before this had not had a comprehensive city plan since 1981. Jim Strickland, when he was the mayor, he wanted to get a comprehensive plan in place. It's basically like how if the city is going to grow, let's guide that growth in a way that that we can all agree on where things should grow and what how they will do that. And the idea at the time was let's build around our anchors, right? The city can't grow out anymore. We're done with annexation. We're not going to do that. So the idea is to build up instead of out, which means that we're going to build on our footprint, which is about 300 square miles. Memphis is a huge city.
It's almost as big as LA.
Yes. And so I had that information in here and I took it out just because but all that stuff's fascinating to me, that Memphis is so much bigger than like Boston or something like that. But,
yeah. And also that I think that our sprawl contributes to a lot of the problems that we have.
For sure.
It makes it harder for police to enforce the law. It makes it, it makes sewers and water lines more expensive, and everything.
Yeah. And so we have de-annexed a few areas since then, but the 3.0 plan basically says, okay, let's pick what these anchors are, and then we're going to say we're going to grow around these anchors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the Midtown Memphis folks, they say, well, these anchors you picked aren't fair. Why is CBU an anchor, but Rhodes College is not, for example?
Mm-hmm.
And the plan was formed with the guidance of planning and zoning folks from the city and the county, and but they would have these public meetings and they would sit down with residents all across the city. They had a zillion meetings on these things, and a lot of that input of what is an anchor and what isn't was picked by regular citizens like me. One of the examples was, okay, Overton Square is an anchor, right? It ought to be. There's plenty of restaurants around there.
Sure.
There's a lot of different housing and things like that. Let's build density around Overton Square.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that might do, the Midtown Memphis folks think that would open up the area around Overton Square, would change their zoning, right? So if you are living on a street and it's all single family homes and you bought your house, your biggest investment of your life probably is your house, and you bought it on a street because it's quiet, it's simple, there's all of these things going on there. And then all of a sudden this plan comes along and says, you know what, we can take one of these beautiful old homes and we can chop it up into a fourplex or a duplex or something like that. And that necessarily isn't the worst thing, and it's not even the tenants of those buildings that they have necessarily a problem with. They're afraid that, like so many properties in Midtown and Memphis in general, that it's going to be a lot of out-of-town property owners, right?
Mm-hmm.
That'll come in, they'll say, okay, I can see how I can take this beautiful old Midtown house, chop it up, and just make a fortune with it, right? It's on a quiet street. People want that. Chop it up, and I'll get a bunch of people in there, to pay the bills, and I'll get all this money. But they're in, wherever they are. They may not be in Memphis, and they're not going to care about the property the way that, the owner of that home living there would take care of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're afraid that, you do this enough times in enough places all over Midtown and downtown and all over the city, really. It'll start to destabilize the neighborhood, So, that young couple coming in and say, I'm going to buy my home. They're looking at that same street with single family homes. And they'll say, oh gosh, that place looks run down, and there's just, this doesn't look like the street I want to be on.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they will move and not bring in that, that care and love to the neighborhood that it used to have. And that'll destabilize it enough to where it might get run down again, and so it's kind of it's like I said, it's not one for the kids necessarily, but if you own a home in a place, you really care about this issue. What goes next to you, because you don't want to move. You love where you are. And these folks don't want to see change happen in places that are already secure and
secure and stable neighborhoods
yes,
too.
right.
I thought one thing that was interesting that you pointed out was that Memphis 3.0 basically treats downtown and Midtown the same,
Yes.
as the same, and then treats East Memphis as different.
There are 14 different kind of planning areas that Memphis has been chopped up into, and so downtown, Midtown, and the medical center are all put together. And the downtown neighborhood association was out of the meeting that I went to, and they said that's ridiculous. We should have a lot of density downtown. That's what we're built for. Midtown is very different. And then the East Memphis block out there, they're really just not up for a whole lot of density out there.
Mhm.
And they say, well, there's no, according to the plan, I guess, there's not a lot of anchors out there. So a lot of these family homes will be left left alone, all these neighborhoods and stuff. And the Midtown Memphis folks think that's unfair. But if you live around Laurelwood, you might want to go look at the map and see what you think out there. But to kind of go all the way back out, though, the way that I approached the story was I saw the signs. Well, actually, I saw the signs, and then our music editor, Alex Green, was like, "Hey, you need to talk to Robert Gordon about this. He's making some noise out there." And then I finally did it, and I got into it that way. And I haven't covered development in a while. I had to kind of get that brain back out there. So the way that I went to a meeting, and I had some interviews with some people to kind of hear that side of it, and then I talked to some folks with the planning department.
Mhm.
And then when I go to like put it all together, you know how a story can go, so I was like, okay, well, they're saying this, but the plan says this, and then City Hall says this, right? And then try to weave all that together.
Mhm.
And I was coming up with a story that was so dense and unfun to read, and I thought I wasn't enjoying it. I didn't read well, and so I had to pull back out. I was like, okay, I'm not going to try to say this is true, this isn't true, this is whatever. I went to a meeting and I just said, these folks are going to Midtown. They're making the noise. Here's what they're saying, and let them own that, right?
Right.
And then have a rebuttal from the planning department to kind of say, all those things that Midtown Memphis is saying is going to happen ain't going to happen, So I kind of pulled myself out of it in a way, and then just kind of let the public conversation breathe in the story.
Yeah, and Anna Travers, our CEO, has said this to me before. It's like, you don't have to solve this problem in the story.
Yeah.
Like, that's not your. But when you get into this thing, you're like, okay, well, I can see the way through.
Yeah.
And you really get in the weeds. So I totally, I understand that. And, I mean, so what is the planning department's rebuttal to not accusations, to the argument
Yeah.
that this is going to destabilize neighborhoods, that we don't need to be treating downtown and Midtown as the same place, that these anchors are poorly chosen? What are the rebuttal to that?
The rebuttal is, again, the plan's not going to do what you think it's going to do, and the reason why is because if your area is already zoned for single family residence, there's no reason to go in there and do the most extreme thing and put a duplex in there. You're
Mhm.
already zoned that way, and we already have a system in place for zoning. And if it was going to change, there's a million things that have to happen before this guy gets or this developer gets a permission to go in there and do it. And there's Chris, there's so much frustration between from both groups, Midtown Memphis and the planning department. And they had a ton of meetings, and something that didn't make it into the story was they were having a lot of meetings with Robert's group, and then John Zena, he's the director of Division of Planning and Development for Memphis and Shelby County, and they were meeting, I guess, pretty regularly, and they were going around and around with all these points, and then they just kind of broke off. And Robert Gordon would tell me that they got a kiss-off letter from John Zena. Didn't make it in the story, but that basically said, we're not going to interact with this topic anymore. We've said all we're going to say, and he was frustrated by that, and and city officials too. When I talked to them, they were like, I don't know what else we can say to let these people know that this is not how it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's as you said also in the story. This is just the first. You're going to keep on this one.
Yeah, and really hope to, because so the timeline is things are going to happen. Things are going to happen. There's more public meetings. I think there's one March 20th in Midtown, Cooper Young. So keep an eye out for that. And so more public meetings like that. Then kind of an updated version of the plan is going to come out later this year, and then the city council will have a look at it in 26. And so at that time, Robert's already. It says it in the on the blurb on the front that they're ready for a showdown at City Hall over this to say, if certain changes aren't met or made, and all these things that we're really going to get down here and battle this thing down in front of City Hall. And as we go along, I don't know what the next story in this is going to be. It's kind of an interesting topic, but folks are already starting to email me and text me, and a lot of folks have a lot of thoughts on this. So we'll see what the next story. If you have the next story on 3.0, holler at me, let me know. Toby at memphisflyer.com, and let me know. But yes, this story is broad and deep, and got a lot more to talk about.
Right. Which reminds me of the mayor's Reddit AMA.
Yeah.
Ask Me Anything, because which he did, was yesterday, day before yesterday, a couple days ago?
Yes, a couple days ago.
One of the questions, though, was about out-of-town developers,
Mm-hmm.
and which I thought was really interesting. And what I heard from him, which is not something I'd heard from the mayor before, was a concern about too many out-of-town property owners.
That's right.
And, some of these people are in China, some of them are in California, some of them are, everywhere, and they're not invested in the city.
That's right.
I mean, they're invested in the city, but they don't care what happens here as long as that rent keeps flowing, And one of the things he mentioned was, like, if you have more than what he wanted to look into, maybe if you have more than 10 properties, you get taxed at the corporate rate and not at the individual rate.
Yeah.
Which is a higher tax bracket, which I thought was a really interesting proposal that I would like to hear more about. But it seems that it makes good sense to me, and it also shows to me that the mayor is thinking about these things too.
And if you haven't seen that AMA, go check it out. We have some highlights on memphisflyer.com. But I just stopped my tracks. I had forgotten that he said that and didn't read that far into it. But any local Memphis official suggesting that we tax companies at any kind of level, that's incredible to me.
Yeah.
I'm for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Hey, just pay your fair share. I mean, for the first time, it's not like, oh, if you own 20 of these, then we're going to give you a tax break at, $2 million or something.
Right. It's the opposite.
Right.
I know. And that story about the pilots that was out recently about how much more pilot that we have. Shelby County, there's 500 pilots in Shelby County, and Davidson County has got 40.
Yeah.
It's
insane.
Yeah.
It's a runaway train, and you and I have talked about this. I'm pretty pissed off about all that stuff, and it's insane. So if you think about it, that's 500 big companies, wealthy companies that aren't paying their taxes, folks. And I am.
They just raised our property taxes.
Yeah, I mean by a lot.
Yeah.
I have to pay my MLGW bill. I don't know about y'all, but they threatened to turn it off. Elon Musk, they don't care about him. They're like, fine. It's it might be naivete to think that way, but it's the truth.
No, it's the truth. Yeah,
I pay my taxes, people.
Anyways, pick up the Memphis Flyer. Check out this story. You can also look at it at memphisflyer.com. This is just the beginning on this. And it's just really extremely well written and really well organized. And I felt like I was very much educated after I read that story. So I appreciate you.
Good. That's all I was hoping for, is to let folks know what the conversation is out there. So if I've done that, then I appreciate you. And
honestly, I mean, I can see. I hate to be the journalist that says this, but I can see both sides on this.
Yeah, for sure. For
sure. I guess the other thing that I have, I saw The Monkey this week.
Right.
That was a Osgood Perkins movie. He did Long Legs last year. And it is, so it's funny, but I don't think it's the kind of funny that is for everybody. Because it's really crass. It's really bloody. It goes over into slapstick, really. And there comes a point when it's gore in a film just becomes spurting blood just becomes funny.
Yeah.
You know, I think if there's realistic like consequences for the violence in a film, then the gore becomes horrifying and you get that emotional connection. But then you can also like go the other way. And you know what they say about slapstick, the old there's like if if you fall off a cliff and die, that's slapstick. That's funny. If I stub my toe, that's tragedy. You know? But anyways, it's a really great. It's based on a Stephen King short story from the Skeleton Crew, which was from '85. I think the book was originally, and this pair of twins finds a monkey. You know, the old like monkey.
Well, now you're going that way, and then when people think about these monkeys, they think about the ones with the symbol.
Right.
And so a big deal has been this monkey has to go up and down and beat on a drum.
It's got drums, yeah, because Toy Story, because Disney trademarked the traditional organ grinder monkey for Toy Story.
That's insane.
I
Can you
know.
imagine they just own the whole ride? Wow.
Yeah, and you could probably, and I think probably what went down because this was like a $10 million movie,
Okay.
so which is a lot of money, but not for not when you're fighting Disney. Like they probably could have made gone ahead with it and then like fought it out in court, and they probably would have prevailed ultimately. But it's also like, why should we even bother?
Hey, we'll just make him hit a drum. It's fine.
Yeah, and it works.
Sure.
It's cool. It works. It's fun, but yeah, they find this monkey, and whenever they turn the key on the monkey and let it go, somebody dies.
Oh boy!
And they can't control who it is, and they learn that they can't control who it is the hard way because they killed their mom.
Spoilers, my guy.
I know. Well, that's not even like halfway through the movie. So, anyways, highly recommended if you're into that kind of thing. And this is an old school Stephen King thing. And one of the things I wrote about in my review was Creepshow, which was in the Time Warp Drive-In Halloween program last year, which I had not seen since the VHS era. And I just thought I was like, wow, this is so much better and cooler than I thought it was, than I remembered it being. And this movie really reminds me of that. So if you're into that kind of thing, this is your thing, and it's the art horror stuff that we've been seeing the last couple of years, which I've been all for. I love it. I love Nosferatu. If you haven't seen that yet, I highly recommend. But this is well made. It looks good, but it also has a really irreverent like tone to it, and it's not like all those art horror movies are just very serious. Like this is an art movie, and this is an art movie, but it's funny, So if you're into that kind of humor, highly recommend.
Right.
My wife is quite squeamish, and she laughed her ass off through the whole thing.
Fantastic.
So, well, Toby, thank you very much.
Yeah, man.
For showing up. I always love having you on the show. It's been the Memphis Flyer podcast. We will see you next week.
Bye, y'all.